These 10 stats could be the difference between you winning or losing your Week 11 matchup. And the first stat is 31. That is where the New Orleans Saints run defense ranks right now in terms of fantasy points allowed, only behind the Carolina Panthers as the worst run defense in the NFL. And we've seen some running backs like Sean Tucker, Javonte Williams, not elite running backs have some big games against them. Now it is Nick Chubb's turn. And I know Nick Chubb does not look like the same guy we remember coming off that serious knee injury. He's been terrible. He's been inefficient. But it's the Saints. I think he can get it done against the Saints. He gets almost all the carries in this backfield. If they get near the goal line, he's going to get all the goal line carries in this backfield. I don't think Nick Chubb is going to go off this week because I don't think this version of Nick Chubb can go off anymore. But this week with the bye weeks, you might need Nick Chubb as an RB2. I think he's more than startable this week in this matchup, and I think he even gives you a little bit of upside in your RB2 slot. The next stat you need to know is 0. That was how many carries Raheem Mostert got in week 10. 0 carries, caught 2 passes for 25 yards. I don't know what's going on here. We're starting to see the rookie Jaylen Wright get some carries. Of course, Devon Achane is the clear lead back here. Raheem Mostert was a guy you at least felt good about, like, okay, he'll give me around 10 carries. He could always score. I don't know if you could feel that way anymore. Even in this matchup at home against the Raiders, it is so risky to start Raheem Mostert this week after what we saw last week. Even if he scores, even if he falls in the end zone, what are you really getting from Raheem Mostert? And the risk here is that he gets you absolutely nothing this week in fantasy. I think you have to ignore the matchup, ignore what Raheem Mostert has done in the past. You gotta bench him this week if at all possible. Next stat you need to know is 82. That was the percentage of the backfield carries Audric Estime got in week 10 for the Denver Broncos. 14 carries, Jaleel McLaughlin only 2, Javonte Williams only 1. Now I know the coaches are saying, oh, he was like the hot hand, we just rode the hot hand, but he averaged 3.8 yards per carry in that game. How hot was he really? I think we're going to see Audric Estime as the lead back going forward rest of the season. And why not? Jaleel McLaughlin, I mean, come on, are we done with this guy by now? Javonte Williams, okay, I'm done with this guy by now. He's looked terrible this year. Why not give Estime a shot? Why not give the rookie a shot? Now, on the downside here, this is not the best matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, but any running back getting 14, 15 plus carries with a chance to score a touchdown has to be at least considered in fantasy, especially, again, if you got bye weeks killing you this week and you need an RB2. I don't like him as much as Nick Chubb, of course, because the matchup isn't as good, but at least the volume is there. You can play him if you need to. The next stat you need to know is 39. That was Alexander Mattison's snap percentage in week 9 before the team's week 10 bye. But even worse for Alexander Mattison was the fact that Zamir White got 2 carries inside the 5-yard line, including the touchdown, and Amir Abdullah was the pass catching back getting all the targets here. For a while there, it was looking like Alexander Mattison was one of these sneaky start, RB2 type of plays, but now it looks like he might not even be the RB2 in Las Vegas. He might be the RB3. Remember, they fired their offensive coordinator during the bye week. We're coming out of week 10 with a whole new offensive coordinator here. We don't know how this backfield is going to play out. We don't know if it's going to be Mattison. We don't know if it's going to be White. We don't know if it's going to be a committee. Amir Abdullah, maybe the pass catching back. This is a backfield you have to avoid for this week to see how it plays out. If you've been rolling out Mattison as a solid RB2 every week, this is not the week to do it. Please bench Alexander Mattison this week until we get more clarity on this backfield. And please, if you're enjoying the video, enjoying the content, hit that like button and subscribe. We'd greatly appreciate it. The next stat you need to know is 14.9. That is Jaylen Waddle's target share in the 3 games since Tua has come back. That is 4th on the team behind Devon Achane, Tyreek Hill, and even the tight end Jonnu Smith. His 57 receiving yards last week was the first time he topped 50 receiving yards since week 1. This guy has been one of the biggest busts in fantasy football. And what's the upside here? Like, what is the path to him not being a bust anymore? He got Tua back. That didn't help. There's nothing that's going to help him here outside of maybe a Tyreek Hill injury. And I know Tyreek Hill dealing with that risk, but he's saying if he's going to have surgery, it's not going to be till the offseason. Not to mention the Raiders have actually been pretty good against wide receivers, giving up the 5th fewest points to wide receivers and the fewest points to outside wide receivers. I gave Waddle one last chance last week in a good matchup. It didn't happen. Now he gets a tough matchup. I am done with Jaylen Waddle, and I think you should be too. The next stat you need to know is 13.1. That was Adonai Mitchell's PPR points in week 10 with Joe Flacco under center and Michael Pittman out for the game. So it looked like, hey, go grab Adonai Mitchell this week. He could be a streaming option in your PPR leagues. Except Joe Flacco, finally, thank you, got benched, and Michael Pittman is coming back to play. They've already said he's going to play in week 11. He was a full participant in practice all week. So if you did add Adonai Mitchell thinking like, okay, I can flex this guy in my PPR leagues because it's Flacco and no Pittman. Sorry to tell you, it's Richardson with Michael Pittman. I think Adonai Mitchell, I mean, you want to keep him on your bench and stash him just in case, sure, but I don't think he can be started in week 10. But you can definitely put Aaron Rodgers in your pick'ems on Underdog because he only needs to get half a yard if you're a new customer on Underdog Fantasy. For as bad as Aaron Rodgers has been, he can do that. Pair that with any other pick or picks you like. That's an easy win right there. And just make sure when you do join, you join using promo code ENDGAME because not only will you get that new customer free pick, you'll also get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. The next stat you need to know is 31. That is where the Kansas City Chiefs rank in terms of fantasy points given up to slot wide receivers. This is good news for Khalil Shakir because he plays almost exclusively out of the slot. Now, I know he didn't have a big game last week in what looked like a good spot, but this is another kind of sneaky good spot for him. And we know in PPR leagues, he at least gives you a very nice floor. He always has a chance to catch a touchdown. And these Bills-Chiefs games sometimes turn into shootouts. And if that's the case, they're going to need to lean on Khalil Shakir because Dalton Kincaid is out, Keon Coleman is out, and Amari Cooper is, well, I'll talk about him a little bit later. But even though this looks like a tough spot on paper for Khalil Shakir, it's actually not, and I think you can roll him out as a flex start in PPR leagues. The next stat you need to know is 10.9. That is Jaxon Smith-Njigba's PPR points per game in the games that DK Metcalf has played this year. And, DK Metcalf is back. He's practiced fully all week. He is good to go. Not to mention, the last time these teams played this year, Jaxon Smith-Njigba had 5 catches, 59 yards, and a fumble. I know he's coming off that huge game before the bye. You probably don't want to bench him. You're like, that's too much upside to bench. But really, is it? He did this earlier in the year where he had a nice game, and then he went back to being terrible. I think with DK Metcalf back in this tough matchup against the 49ers, who, by the way, give up the 10th fewest points to slot wide receivers, I think it's best to leave JSN on the bench if at all possible. I know some of you can't, so you might have to start him. Just don't expect another repeat of what we saw in week 9. The next stat you need to know is 19.6. That is Russell Wilson's points per game since he took over the starting job in Pittsburgh. And now he gets a fantastic matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, who are allowing the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And since week 5, the only quarterback to not go over 24 fantasy points against them is Bo Nix. George Pickens looking good. They got Mike Williams there. This is a good matchup for Russell Wilson at home against a Ravens defense that is just getting destroyed by passing games. This game has the potential to be a shootout because all Ravens games have a potential to be a shootout. Russell Wilson, one of my top streaming options this week. If you need a streamer, or if you did pick him up to stream him, roll him out with confidence this week. I think he'll be one of the top performing quarterbacks in week 11. And the last stat you need to know is not a stat at all. It's a word: cast. That's right, Amari Cooper is going to try to catch footballs while wearing a cast on his injured wrist. A wide receiver is wearing a cast and is going to catch footballs. I don't even think I need to say anything else, do I?